Okay, so this video has a bit of a chaotic backstory, which is probably gonna make you all cry with disappointment. So originally, the art in this video was supposed to be from Mermaid of 2020. I got myself all hyped up to draw cute mermaids for a month, even made my own prompt list to go off of because I'm dang near incapable of not taking on more projects than I could possibly ever complete. And if you had all followed me on Twitter, then you might have noticed that I made it like 6 days into the month and then died. And I'm like, yeah, that's disappointing, didn't get to draw all the ideas I had, but it's my own list, right? I can just like go through it in my spare time, right? Yeah, that didn't happen. So then, as 2021 rears its ugly head and a new mermaid looms along the horizon, I get the brilliant idea to go back to that unfinished prompt list and try to complete it for that May. You know, despite having commissions and also trying to make videos and also trying to do concept art for my own projects. And again, because I'm apparently incapable of not making things needlessly difficult for myself, I planned to compile the footage from all of those pieces into a single video where I would then list off 100 cool facts about the ocean. As in, I would take 31 days worth of speed paints compacted into a single video. Like a smart person. So then May rears its head, and of course, I haven't finished the whole prompt list because I'm a disappointment to society. So I'm like, well, how else can I use these speed paints? Oh, what's that, Brain? You have an idea? An idea to have a bunch of your friends jump in on the video to read out all of these cool facts you've compiled? Oh, and you're going to draw all of them as mermaids too? Bam! That's my May. Bruh, we're not even done, because then I had to take Demona to the vet and get her some meds for spring allergies, the main side effect from which was frequent urination, which basically meant that she was going to have to pee every hour on the hour, or every 3 hours if she was sleeping, for 2 weeks. So I had to be awake so that there was someone to let her out, because apparently nobody else could do it. There's pee stains all outside my door because I dared to take a nap every hour for 2 weeks. I was very tired is what I'm trying to say. So now it's July. The community is on fire yet again, and the fun thing about that is it basically doesn't matter when you're watching this video, the community is probably on fire about something, and it became emotionally exhausting on day 3. I think we all need a bit of a breather. So, here's a video where I draw a bunch of mermaids and my friends tell you cool things about the ocean. That's it. That's the whole video. Enjoy!
Fact: the largest waterfalls in the world are underwater. A common thing you're going to find when looking at the ocean is that everything is bigger under the sea, and that includes waterfalls. The largest recorded underwater waterfall exists between Greenland and Iceland in the Denmark Strait, appropriately called the Denmark Strait Cataract. I'm sure most people understand how a standard waterfall works. Water falls off a ledge, sort of in the name. You know, waterfall.
It's a play on words.
But underwater falls are obviously different. Underwater falls can be formed when cold and warm water collide. The denser cold water of the Nordic Sea flows downward and sinks below the incoming warmer water from the Irminger Sea. And in the case of the Denmark Strait Cataract, the cold water is sent careening down an enormous drop in the ocean floor at an estimated rate of 5 million cubic meters per second. As a comparison, the highest flow rate for an above-water waterfall is an estimated 25,768 cubic meters per second at the Inga Falls in the Congo. But this isn't even the only means by which an underwater waterfall can form. It can also be caused by variations in salinity. Water becomes denser the greater the percentage of salt. So even in situations where the water is warm, the high levels of salt can cause it to sink below the less salty waters in much the same way. These underwater falls play a massive role in regulating the climate of our oceans, as the descending water from these falls form a deep sea current that carries the water long distances.
Fact: we have only explored about 5% of the ocean. While humans have sought out to explore the land, only fairly recently in our history have we developed the technology to allow us to explore the sea. Freediving has only allowed us to go so far down. In the 16th and 17th century, people switched to diving bells, which allowed them to funnel air down to the diver, and this was later improved with the creation of the helmet and suit, creating the recognizable framework of the standard diving dress. Nowadays, we have scuba gear, submarines, and submersible drones to explore the ocean's depths, and even then our understanding understanding and mapping of the seafloor is minimal. As recently as March 2021, the Caledon Oceanic Challenger Deep Expedition Team drove 10,925 meters in an effort to map the ocean floor of the Marianas Trench. In-depth maps and footage of these rarely seen sites are crucial to our understanding of the ocean and all of its wonders, but we're still a long way away from navigating below the sea as we navigate above it.
There exists more historical artifacts under the sea than in all of the world's museums combined. And just think about how much of those artifacts have deteriorated over the years. There are many causes of this, the most obvious one being shipwrecks. Humanity has lost so many vessels to the briny deep, along with whatever treasures those vessels were carrying at the time, that we have created a coffin of culture that we can't really access. Ships sunk during war times, planes that have fallen out of the sky, small fishing vessels overtaken by storms. These wrecks have accumulated over the years by the hundreds. World War II saw over 1,500 ships and a few more crew meet their end beneath the waves. A big reason behind this unofficial aquatic collection stems from our limited ability to explore the ocean floor. So while many of our ships have been lost through the passage of time, some are simply too far out of our reach at this moment. But with every new advancement in underwater exploration technology, we are able to access more and more of these lost caches of culture. Heck, on March 31st of this year, Canadian Oceanic was able to travel to a depth of 21,180 feet to record and map the wreck of the USS Johnston in the Philippine Sea.
The ocean is home to 95% of the life on the planet Earth. Do you sometimes look at swarms of insects and think, they outnumber us 1,000,000,000 to 1. They could totally destroy us if they wanted to. Well, they've got nothing on the percentage of mammals, fish, plankton, microorganisms, and basically all aquatic life that exists under the sea. Can't really expand on this one too much. The ocean is a big, deep place and occupies the majority of the planet. Honestly, if you didn't expect there to be more life below the waves than above, then I don't know what to tell you. Surprise, I guess.
Fact: there are underwater lakes. Increased salinity makes water heavier, but did you know that this heavier salinated water can collect into underwater lakes and rivers? Typically called brine pools, these strange collection of water and chemicals such as hydrogen sulfide and methane were first discovered by a Navy survey in the early 1980s. Most sea life cannot stand the high salt content and quickly suffer from cerebral hypoxia when entering a brine pool. If they are unable to escape the pool within a short enough window, then they will quickly die and most often be preserved by the contents of the pool itself, creating a mummified fish graveyard. Despite this, the edges of brine pools are uniquely littered with life. Snails, worms, and bivalves often surround the beaches of these underwater lakes, living in symbiosis with the harsh environment they call their home. Much like those living in tsunami territory though, it only takes one day of bad weather for things to be washed away, and even underwater you can be drowned out by the waves of the lake. I was gonna try and put a joke here, but honestly looking up these brine pools, it was actually really cool, so check it out. I highly encourage it.
The largest animal to ever exist on Earth lives in the ocean. If the ocean with its deep, dark trenches and long expanses of vast, uninterrupted water is going to cover the majority of the planet, then it should come as no shock to learn that the largest creatures to live on the planet do so in the ocean. Does your brain go to megalodons, basilosaurus, leechsithis, other long prehistoric creature names that I have to look up the pronunciation for? Well, here's a maybe surprise for you. The largest animal to ever exist still exists. My homie, the blue whale. Imagine 100 feet, 199 tons of living, breathing animals swimming up underneath you as it cruises through the ocean in search of delicious clusters of krill. Now imagine a family of them. Now take a deep breath because that might have been a lot for you. The point is, the ocean is a big place, and that makes for big mammals to travel those long, scenic distances.
Fact.
Sea life gets gigantic the deeper you go. Deep sea gigantism is the tendency in zoology for invertebrates living within the abyssal zone to increase in size across a wide variety of species when compared to their shallow water relatives. Theories as to why this happens ranges from Kleiber's rule, which states that the bodies of larger animals generally have to be more efficient, so food scarcity and vast distances to travel breed the need for larger bodies, to Bergman's rule, which recognizes a correlation between colder temperatures and increased body size, as colder climates slow the metabolic rate and sometimes aging processes of creatures, even to concentrations of dissolved oxygen. Deep sea gigantism has been observed in decapods, isopods, amphipods, mysids, euphausiids, cnidarians, cephalopods, and anguilliform eels. Basically, all the lovely creepy colors of the depths. Obviously, this trend is quite limited, as some species below a certain threshold will actually decrease in depth, but you can see it in some more well-known examples like the colossal squid, a creature whose gigantic ancestors may have served as sea monsters for early sailors. Because, they can't just stay in the abyssal zone. They have to swim up every once in a while to remind us just how small we are. Chad's dick got nothing on the Mezzanico-toothus Hamiltoni.
Fact. The highest mountain on Earth is below sea level. Did you happen to think that the tallest mountain on Earth was Everest? Well, that may be true for mountains that rest exclusively above sea level. If you venture below the waves, the tallest mountain on Earth is actually Mauna Kea. Unlike Everest's 29,031-foot height, Mauna Kea's summit stands 4,207 meters above sea level, making it the highest point in the state of Hawaii. With the rest of its 32,696-foot tall self resting at the bottom of the ocean, Mauna Kea is also a dormant volcano, being one of the 6 volcanoes that originally formed the Hawaiian archipelago. It has been dormant for over 4,000 years.
Fact. Underwater cities exist. No, I'm not talking about the lost city of Atlantis. Please touch grass. Global warming issues have already alerted people to the potential of having coastal cities lost to the sea. But would it surprise you to know that we've been losing and then later rediscovering settlements beneath the waves for more than 8,000 years? The world is ever changing, which doesn't bode well for rigid and stationary settlements. Thriving trading posts have been lost to the sea, such as Port Royal of Jamaica, partially submerged by a tsunami in 1692, or Pavlopetri of Greece, a modern name given to an ancient city, dragged down by an earthquake 5,000 years ago. Even sites originally thought to have been myths have been discovered underwater. Dwarka of India, the fabled home of Lord Krishna, was discovered 131 feet below sea level, beneath the city's modern incarnation. We've even aided in some of these settlements being lost to the water, as many more recent floods have been the result of the construction of dams and water reservoirs. While the people relocate to safer ground, they leave behind the walls and buildings they once called home. Some towns, such as Mediano and Sant Roma de Sau of Spain or Kalyazin of Russia, can still partially be seen above the water, but only the highest points of their churches and belfries.
Fact. The Great Barrier Reef is the largest living organism on the planet. When you think of the largest living thing on the planet, you might think of the blue whale, which is a pretty good start, but we are talking bigger. Big chungus bigger. Coral reefs are colonies of coral polyps, held together by calcium carbonate, and the Great Barrier Reef, in particular, is a collection of 3,000 reefs and 900 coral islands, spanning a spectacular 344,400 square kilometers. A massive undersea ecosystem, basically living within the holes and ridges of the city of tiny little communal creatures. There are an estimated 1,400 species of coral making up the majority of this reef, creating homes and viable ecosystems for more than 1,500 species of fish, 6 of the 7 species of marine turtles, 3,000 species of mollusks, 134 species of sharks and rays, 30 species of marine mammals, a notable population of endangered dugongs, 215 species of birds, 330 species of sea squirts, yes, those are a thing, and over 300 species of borrelians. Then you got seawater crocodiles, seahorses, dolphins, and sea snakes. And these are just the ones we know about. We're still discovering new species and features, like the 500-meter tall coral reefs scientists stumbled upon last year, or the 5 previously undescribed species discovered during an exploration dive by the Schmidt Ocean Institute. They even streamed their expeditions on YouTube for all to see. The Great Barrier Reef is so vast that it can even be seen from space.
The deepest point in the ocean is the Challenger Deep. Named after the British Royal Navy ship that first recorded its depths, the HMS Challenger, the Challenger Deep is the lowest point of the Mariana Trench, which is also known for being extremely deep on its own, at a point between 10,902 to 10,929 meters, making it the deepest known point of the whole ocean. Only 22 people on Earth have descended into the Challenger Deep and met me, wickedling and staring.
Fact. The sun is what makes the ocean blue. If someone told you that the ocean is blue because it reflects the sky, then they're wrong. In fact, the ocean is actually blue because of how it absorbs sunlight. Water absorbs infrared light from the visible light color spectrum, the long wavelength red and the short wavelength ultraviolet and violet, and then absorbs green and yellow. The remaining blue wavelengths of light then bounce off the surface of the water and give it its blue appearance. The reason water looks so clear in a glass of water is because there aren't enough water molecules present to effectively reflect the blue light, and since sunlight is only able to reach roughly 200 meters below sea level, the majority of the ocean exists in near to complete darkness. How strange is it to think that everything is only the color that it is because that's the wavelength of light that it fails to absorb? So remember people, the next time anyone compliments you on your red shirt, tell them it's not actually red, it's everything but red. It just fails to absorb red light. You'd look like a tool, but you'd be right. And in the end, that's all that matters.
Brinicles are a thing. Did you ever wonder what happens to the salt in salt water when it freezes into ice? When salt water freezes, the salt brine is pushed downwards and out. This stream of denser, steadily sinking brine is so cold that it freezes the water around it, creating a hollow stalactite of salt descending from the polar ice. An icicle, you might say, hence the name Brinicle. Seriously, check out a video of these things, they're crazy cool.
Fact.
Many creatures living in the abyss can glow. The abyssal zone, or the abyssopelagic layer, is a massive ecological biome steeped in perpetual darkness. Existing at depths between 3,000 to 6,000 meters below sea level, creatures living in the abyssal zone rarely, if ever, experience natural sunlight, so they have a creative evolutionary means of getting around this hindrance. Not only do fish living in this depth of the ocean have to withstand the cold and crushing pressure, they also need to be able to find mates and food, and so, in the absence of natural light, they evolved to create their own. Bioluminescence is very common in deep sea life, as roughly 80% of marine life living between 200 and 1,000 meters below sea level sports some manner of living light. Bioluminescence commonly appears as blue light, as light on the blue end of the spectrum is very notably visible in water, but it can also sometimes range from violet to green and yellow. In very rare cases, bioluminescence can appear red, which is a wavelength most deep-sea fish can't even detect, making it perfect for predators to camouflage themselves. You can even tell how important bioluminescence is in the dark depths simply by fish from that depth still having eyes. Why would you need big eyes in a place where everything is pure darkness? So you can see glowing krill.
Fact. The Indian Ocean is the hottest of the 5 oceans. Hot. Pacific, Atlantic, Indian, Southern, and the Arctic. These are the 5 bodies of water that make up the global ocean. The Indian Ocean is completely cut off from the Arctic Ocean, which you guys are probably smart enough to already know is the coldest. So it doesn't receive outflows of cold water. It also borders the warmer climates of the Southern, Atlantic, and Pacific Oceans, leaving its upper oceanic layer at a relatively constant 19 to 30 degrees Celsius. Oh! Considering the size of the measured layer can go up to 1,200 feet below sea level, that's some pretty substantial heat going on there. You sexy ocean.
Fact. There are an estimated 3 million shipwrecks on the ocean floor. Seafaring trade has been a commonality in human civilization since we figured out how to build boats, but, much like everything in life, the practice has not been immune to human error. Over the thousands of years that we've sailed across the sea, we've lost countless hundreds of ships and planes to the unexplored depths of the sea. In 1999, a report estimated that there were roughly 3 million quote-unquote heritage wrecks that had accumulated on the sea floor, and this estimation was backed up by the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. Within the quarterly publication for the Society of Historical Archaeology, this estimate shined a light on the vast number of unexplored, undocumented, and, most worryingly, unprotected sunken historical sites that would be, and already had been, subject to degradation over time. While many of these ships are small fishing vessels or purposely sunken ships, others sank due to collisions with other ships, warfare, sabotage, improperly stored cargo, piracy, fires, or turbulent weather. Each of these ships tell a story about how it sank to its final resting place, and as time moves forward, the sea steadily washes away these historical clues. Count that as today's reason to learn how to scuba dive.
Fact. The ocean is 3% salt, and that salt comes from the land. Seawater isn't just magically naturally salty. The salt has to come from somewhere, and that somewhere happens to be two places: rocks on land and openings to the rocks below the seafloor. Underwater volcanic activity spews new minerals into the ocean, pushed out with water heated by molten magma far below. Salt just so happens to be one of those minerals. And while volcanic activity pushes minerals upwards, gravity also drags them downwards, as when rocks on land erode away over time, they too release minerals and ions. They are minerals carried away by streams and rivers that eventually open up into the ocean, creating a salty sea we know today. Please do not erode me. I'd rather not be eroded. So basically the ocean is eating all of our rocks, and they're making it salty. Maybe not the best diet, but hey, it seems like it works for giant bodies of water-based ecosystems. Funnily enough, growing up, there was a rumor that it was actually sperm whale semen that made the ocean salty.
Some aquatic organisms are evolving to eat plastic. While the amount of plastic waste humans are dumping into the oceans is concerningly on the rise, it also brings about a new scientific curiosity which, while definitely interesting, really outline the impact humans have on the planet and the other life forms that inhabit it. In the paper, Rapid Evolution of Plastic Degrading Enzymes Prevental in the Global Oceans, posted on the biology preprint server BioR14, a team of Saudi Arabian scientists found discrepancies between the amount of plastic consumed and produced by humans versus the measurements of plastics found in the sea. While there could be many reasons for this, the most obvious one just being, human error, it was actually discovered that a number of marine microbial specimens contain the enzyme polyethylene terephthalate, PET, which is a very fancy way of saying they develop the ability to eat plastic. According to the paper, an assessment of 416 genomes of planktonic communities across the global ocean identifies 68 oceanic PET-ASE variants, OPET-ASE, that evolved from ancestral enzymes degrading polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. For as encouraging as it is to know that for each means by which humans screw up the planet, nature will fight back, this should be by no means an excuse for people to continue the rampant waste production. If anything, we should view this as nature trying to get the ball rolling on us fixing what we should be fixing.
The bloop. Previously characterized as a deep-sea cryptid, the bloop is the given name for an unusual ultra-low-frequency sound recorded in 1997 by the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. A preliminary theory for the origin of the sound was that it came from a previously undiscovered animal which could have been roughly the size of, if not larger, than a fully grown blue whale. That's the cryptid part. In 2012, however, the NOAA determined that the true origin of the bloop was probably an ice quake. That being when large icebergs scrape across the ocean floor or when cracking ice creates seismic activity that can be measured thousands of kilometers away. Maybe not quite as interesting as an undiscovered sea leviathan, but still pretty cool.
Fact: there are hot springs on the ocean floor. Much in the same way humans will venture to hot springs to enjoy themselves a relaxing, nutrient-rich soak, deep-sea hydrothermal vents provide chemical-rich, hot water to some of the deepest-dwelling organisms. Unlike the regulated hot springs we humans enjoy, hydrothermal vents are much more potent and toxic. These vents act as ongoing chemical reactions. As they pull water down into gaps in the volcanic seabed, they also strip sulfate and magnesium from the ocean, ejecting the superheated water and new metal mixtures up from a pocket of volcanic activity and then out of the hydrothermal chimney. Chemicals such as manganese dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, sulfuric acid, and methane pour out of these vents into long stacks of smoke, as dissolved metals like copper, zinc, iron, and lead settle into mineral-rich deposits in the surrounding vicinity. In the dark depths of the ocean, where the sun cannot reach, hydrothermal vents are an integral part of the undersea ecosystem, providing heat and nutrients in what would otherwise be a desolate and cold environment. The presence of these thriving ecosystems have forced researchers to reassess their understanding of how life manages to sustain itself without the aid of the sun. They have not, however, found a way to incorporate these hot springs into our anime fan service episodes, so clearly we still have a long way to go.
Prehistoric microbes have survived in the ocean. The immediate reaction to that is probably,
Prehistoric viruses trapped in the ice for millions of years defrosting to kill us all!
but you don't actually have to go all the way to the Arctic to find prehistoric microbial life. As recently as 2020, researchers have ventured 18,700 feet below sea level, drilled 246 feet into the bedrock, and brought up samples of microbes that have been resting there for more than 100 million years. They were even able to stimulate the microbes' metabolic activity, effectively waking them up from millions of years of hibernation. Now, who's ready for 2020 but again?
Point Nemo is the most remote point in the ocean. Need a break from human society? Want to just get away from the hustle and bustle? Well, why not try freezing Point Nemo? Named for the captain in Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and also known as the Oceanic Pole of Inaccessibility, it rests more than 1,000 miles from land in all directions, from Ducie Island to the north, Mayher Island to the south, and Motu Nui to the northeast. To be at Point Nemo is to be as far from another human as you can get on planet Earth, the ultimate social hideaway. Provided you don't mind having satellites rain down on you. I mean, if you're going to have satellites crash into Earth, sure, it makes sense to have them crash in the most remote part of the planet. Still counts as littering, though.
Fact. Fish eat a lot of plastic, and it's not good for them. It shouldn't be a secret that animals often eat things that they're not supposed to. Anyone with a dog can possibly tell you as such. But this also extends to our fishy friends. Ever since 1969, with the discovery of plastics within the stomach of a seabird, scientists have been aware of the fact that marine life consumes plastic, and absolutely nobody should be shocked to hear that that's not good for them. Not all fish species do this, of course, and researchers have made a concerted effort to figure out which species of fish are the most affected by ocean pollution. Overall, it shouldn't be surprising to hear that most plastic consumption by marine life occurs in places with high levels of ocean pollution, and as those levels increase, so too do the levels and number of fish species consuming that waste. And while you might think that this primarily has to do with plastic bags or straws or improperly separated six-pack rings, microplastics and nanoplastics are just as much, if not more, of an issue. These are free-floating particles of plastic generally left over when larger plastic products break down. Nanoplastics in particular have been shown to find ways to move from a fish's stomach into their muscle tissue, which is the part of the fish that we humans eat. And yes, a bunch of the fish species consuming plastics are the ones that we ourselves consume. Studies detailing this concern from between 2000 to 2013 found that roughly 15% of fish sampled had consumed plastic, but by 2019, that number had increased to about 33%, with fish higher on the food chain generally being more at risk, probably because they eat all the smaller fish who ate the plastic before them. As if sharks weren't already considered the garbage cans of the ocean and threatened, now even their main food source is being tainted. Those poor babies. Save the fishes!
Fact. Light can only reach 200 meters below the surface of the ocean. The layer of the ocean bathed in sunlight is called the euphoric zone, and it is a layer in which most commercial fishing takes place. This layer allows enough sunlight to pass through that photosynthesis is still possible, and so many marine plant life that makes food in this fashion is probably going to be present here. Once you get further down than 200 meters, however, photosynthesis becomes no longer possible, as there is too little light to work with, and the minuscule amount only decreases further you go down. In very specific cases, sunlight could reach farther than this approximation, but for the most part, if you'd like to be able to see underwater, you're probably going to want to stay within 200 meters of the surface, or maybe bring a really effective flashlight.
3/4 of the Earth's volcanic activity happens in the ocean. Considering most of the planet is covered in water, we shouldn't be surprised to learn that volcanic activity isn't just limited to the land. Whether it be expansion of the mid-oceanic ridge, or whether it be creating deep-sea thermal vents for sea life to congregate around, volcanic activity is practically a constant in the ocean. Volcanoes particularly arise where the tectonic plates of the Earth shift and allow molten rock to spew up from the Earth's core, and expand the seabed by about 15 centimeters a year. Luckily for us, the tectonic plates mostly converge and split apart underwater.
Here's a fact. Less than 1% of the ocean floor is occupied by coral reefs. For something that covers such a small portion of the seafloor, you might be surprised to know that coral reefs serve as the home for at least 25% of all marine species. What we know as coral reefs are actually made up of many colonies of tiny creatures called coral polyps. Coral polyps, fastening themselves together with calcium carbonate and growing into vast ecosystems over the course of hundreds or thousands of years. Many of the coral reefs that exist today are between 5,000 and 10,000 years old, making them not only one of the most vibrant, but also one of the oldest ecosystems and the oldest living ecosystem on the planet. Hear that, guys? These things live.
Fact. The frozen ice of glaciers, if melted, would claim most coastal cities and islands. If you were aware that the ocean only contained 97% of Earth's water, then you might not be worried about the 2% of the remaining volume existing as ice, provided you're unaware that global warming is a thing. Free-floating sea ice didn't constitute much of the problem on its own, as the vast majority of icebergs float along with 90% of their mass already hidden underwater, so sea levels won't change much from those patches of ice melting alone. If you've ever watched an ice cube melt in a glass of water, you can see this phenomenon, as the ice already displaces the same amount of water as it would produce when melted, so you notice very little change in the volume of water. However, glaciers are massive bodies of ice that rest on land, and if they were to all suddenly melt and drift into the sea, ocean levels would rise 70 meters, or 230 feet, completely changing the map of the world as we know it. Australia would develop an inland sea, and South America would develop too. Once landlocked countries like Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan would gain a brand new coast. The islands that we know today would almost entirely be a thing of the past, as the Republic of Maldives, the Solomon Islands, the Republic of Fiji, Cape Verde, the Galapagos Islands, and the Federated States of Micronesia, along with many others, would be lost to the tides. Say goodbye to America's Atlantic coast, as most coastal cities, all of Florida, and a good chunk of California would be reclaimed by the sea. I'm pretty sure that last one was also Lex Luthor's plan in the 1978 Superman movie, so all you need to do was just melt Ice Glacier's forehead. Even at just a fraction of this estimation, if sea levels rise by 10 meters, over 60 million people will be forced out of their homes. Made worse is that the frozen Antarctic ice traps mercury and methane, which would be released if the ice melted, not only causing global temperatures to increase even more, but also potentially poisoning the surrounding waters. Nobody should be surprised to learn that digging up the past without proper knowledge or precautions causes problems.
Sound travels faster in the ocean than it does on land. Sound works by bouncing neighboring molecules off of one another, carrying waves of energy as far and as quickly as those molecules will allow. The closer those molecules exist to one another, the more efficiently that energy is transferred. So, sound can travel more efficiently in denser substances. In air, a sound coming from your right will hit your right ear fractions of a second before it hits your left, giving you an idea of where the sound originates from. But underwater, sound travels so quickly that it becomes almost impossible to recognize where the sound came from. Water contains roughly 800 times more molecules than air, so sound travels much farther and much faster underwater. This also depends on the pressure, salinity, and temperature of the surrounding water, all of which when increased can increase the speed that sound travels. Because of this, sound will travel differently all over the world in different oceanic climates, but still be measurable from kilometers away. In space, no one can hear you scream because there are no molecules to bounce the scream off of, but in the ocean, at least you can be sure that a pod of whales probably heard you.
Fact.
The deepest living fish ever recorded was found over 26,000 feet below sea level. Because I guess we're using the imperial system now. We already know that the Mariana Trench is a pretty deep place. Even saying just that is an understatement. But if there's one thing you can take from this video, it's that life thrives in some places you'd never expect. Take for example the Mariana snailfish. Discovered at a depth of 26,715 feet below sea level, this strange little creature is thought to be mostly blind, sporting translucent skin and thin muscles. The record it holds as the deepest living fish discovered may not even last for long, as different species of so-called ethereal snailfish have been reported to be living even deeper. But this has otherwise never been formally documented.
The ocean is the main driver behind Earth's water cycles. Yeah, that's right. The thing with water drives the water. Who would have thought? A pretty reliable constant with the ocean is that it likes to keep water moving, whether that be as a liquid or a gas. The ocean absorbs solar radiation from the sun, concentrating much of it in tropical waters along the equator. This energy is dispersed either through evaporation into rain clouds or along the global ocean conveyor belt. a system of oceanic currents that circle the globe and run along coastlines. These currents pull water to all corners of the ocean, up and down based on differences in salinity and temperature. Round and round with the tides and rotation of the earth. If water absorbs too much heat from the sun, it evaporates, creating rain clouds that causes hurricanes and tropical storms. If you've ever wondered why tropical storms always seem to circle along the same paths, that's because those paths coincide with oceanic currents. This system carries cold water into warm water climates and vice versa, balancing out and distributing energy across the surface of the planet, basically making it possible for us to exist here in the first place. Thanks, ocean.
50 to 80% of Earth's oxygen comes from the ocean. Oh, I actually didn't know this. Whoa. Everyone knows that oxygen comes from plants, but did you know that more than half of the oxygen on Earth is produced by plants and creatures underwater? Most of this is the result of phytoplankton, microscopic organisms that drift about on ocean currents. Much like plants, phytoplankton uses photosynthesis to create their own food, the byproduct of which is oxygen. Phytoplankton also accumulate in large plumes during seasons where light, and therein the nutrients obtained from it, is in greater abundance. Basically, every breath you take has an oxygen that was probably produced by sea life. Thank you, phytoplankton babies. You are doing us a service.
Fact. Some deep-sea life can survive and thrive without ever seeing the sun, like me. We've all been stuck inside for about a year. I'm sure you know what it's like to not see the sun for days on end. Now imagine if you'd never see the sun before. Imagine what it would be like to live in complete and total darkness. Now imagine doing it under the sea. With so little light available in the deep ocean, marine life has to make do. A lack of natural light not only means that seeing is going to be much more difficult, but it also means that the water surrounding you has less energy and therein less heat to go around. Your descendants could develop massive eyes to help them see in low light environments, less pigmentation, more condensed organs and larger bodies, all of which could aid in helping to resist the cold and the crushing pressure. Some creatures will thrive around sources of natural heat vents, like volcanic activity and thermal vents, creating a stand-in for heat that the sun cannot provide. Life that can live and grow without help from the sun may seem foreign to us, with our wrinkly little ape hands and feet. But I'm sure a bunch of bipedal, finless mammals wandering around underneath a burning, blinding ball of gas in the sky is probably pretty alien too.
There are whole forests worth of kelp. Giant kelp and bull kelp are two species of brown microalgae that grow predominantly along the eastern Pacific coast, all the way up from Alaska and Canada, way down to California, but can grow globally in many temperate or polar climates. Kelp forests sprout up on rocky coastlines, beginning with a holdfast anchoring it to the seabed. The kelp then sprouts blades or leaves with gas-filled pods, ready to pull the kelp up towards the surface towards the sun. Since kelp is not actually a plant, it doesn't need roots to collect nutrients. Instead, kelp will pull nutrients directly from the nutrient-rich waters they grow in. Everything else comes from the sun, which is why kelp tends to grow in clearer waters and why you'll rarely find kelp growing deeper than 100 feet below sea level. Kelp forests act as a vibrant ecosystem, home to hundreds or thousands of species of marine life, both as a spawning and a hunting ground. And for as important as kelp forests are, they are equally dynamic and resilient, as when kelp forests are uprooted by tropical storms, starved by warmer weather, or devoured by sea urchins, they are able to bounce back, growing at a rate of almost 2 feet per day in ideal conditions. Is that it? You can I go home? I need to go. Don't forget to follow Caden Monroe on Twitter.
Life began in the ocean. We're not going to get into a long theological discussion. All life originated in the ocean. In recent years, the theories behind exactly how this happened have shifted from the commonly understood primordial soup model to a newer theory favoring the deep-sea hydrothermal vents. Abiogenesis is a process by which living organisms arise out of non-living matter, and prehistorical hydrothermal vents, rife with abundant chemical compounds and heat, are a perfect starting ground for this process and may have been home to an ancient aquatic organism that served as a common ancestor for most of life on Earth. Some people want to ease the worries of modern day by returning to monkey, but let's be real, they're not going far enough. Return to fish.
Fact. Milky seas. You don't always have to go searching into the depths for bioluminescent creatures. Sometimes they'll just come up to the surface. Rile is a phenomenon involving bioluminescent microbes which float along the surface of the water and cause a brilliant light blue or milky white glow that can not only last for hours, but which has also been recorded spreading across the water's surface up to the size of Connecticut. This neat oceanic feature even appeared in a passage in Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Despite this, and old sea tales describing sailors cautiously moving through these mystical-looking waters, this phenomenon was mostly considered to be a myth and went formally undiscovered for centuries. More recently, archives of satellite footage have been instrumental in detecting these Milky Seas, which seem to largely occupy the northwestern Indian Ocean and are widely believed to be caused by Noctiluca scintillans, a marine organism that demonstrates bright green or red glows when distributed. This same organism is responsible for other oceanic phenomena such as the red tide, where toxic algae blooms overtake coastal waters and beaches. In short, don't drink this water is not actually milky water. I know, I was upset too when I saw that it wasn't actually milk.
The largest mountain range in the world is underwater. Have you ever taken a glance at a satellite or topographical map of the Earth? If you have, then you might have noticed that some sections of the ocean are actually lighter than other sections, weirdly smack dab right in the middle in most cases. It creates a long stretch that snakes its way around every continent. Well, congratulations, that just so happens to be the largest mountain range on the planet, aptly titled the Mid-Ocean Ridge. Mostly because it's a giant ridge that's in the middle of the ocean. That's a pretty good name. Spanning a whopping 65,000 kilometers, the Mid-Ocean Ridge forms a global system of ridges indicating the creation of new land via volcanic activity where the tectonic plates of the planet shift and separate. And for as vast as this mountain range already seems to be, it continues to grow, spurred on by enormous basalt eruptions, increasing the size of the ridge from between 0.8 to 6 inches per year depending on the region and volcanic activity present. 90% of the Mid-Ocean Ridge remains below the surface, but perhaps in hundreds of years' time, the summits of those mountains will eventually turn into islands. Honestly, I think that'd be a pretty rad sight. You know, provided we're still around to see it.
Creatures thought to have been myths or extinct have been found in the ocean depths. If you've heard tales of sailors venturing out into the vast ocean blue, then you may have heard talk of the giant sea monsters reported back to the mainland. Squids the size of ships with tentacles so strong that they would pull down masts and drag ships to a watery grave. Or strange fish thought to look more like living fossils than any sort of modern-day marine life. Well, here there be monsters may be more of an accurate descriptor as researchers have found in recent decades. Creatures that were once thought to only exist in the fantastical tales of sailors are actually real. The colossal squid is basically exactly what you would expect. A 13-meter cephalopod that rises out of the deep during evenings as it chases its main food sources to the surface. That's real. These old illustrations of giant squids attacking ships, those are real things. The frilled shark is an eel-like deep-sea dweller that has been swimming around the secret depths, unchanged for over 80 million years. Heck, there's even a Pokemon based on one of these. The coelacanth, having been considered a transitional species between the fish and tetrapods, was thought to have gone extinct roughly 66 million years ago, but was rediscovered in 1938. It just popped up and caused me to scream at inhuman decibel levels when playing Animal Crossing. Coelacanths as a species are 360 million years old. Just for reference, Homo sapiens are only about 1.8 million years old. We are babies compared to some of these creatures. The massive old fauna of the sea has managed to avoid humans for so long that while you're unlikely to find a still living megalodon, if you're looking for living fossils, the ocean is exactly the place where you want to look.
The Sargasso Sea. Named for the sargassum seaweed often seen floating along the surface of the water. This large section of sea is known for its distinctive deep blue color and unusually clear waters. Unlike other seas, it is not bordered by land masses, and its borders are instead determined by the four major Atlantic-Oceanic currents that circle it. The sea encompassing the interior of the whirlpool these currents form. This not only creates a unique pocket of biological desert, it also carries in detritus from the larger Atlantic Ocean, which created the North Atlantic garbage patch. That's right, you've been tricked. Start off with a cool fact about a clear water sea, and off by reminding you that humans ruin everything. Since the Sargasso Sea is such a large stretch of uninterrupted water, with no land masses, basically the size of the United States, the seaweed that floats along its surface becomes the de facto shelter for the marine life that lives there, many of which cannot be found anywhere else on Earth. This is great. for as long as the seaweed is alive and thriving within the Sargasso Sea. But in the past decade, blooms of sargassum have been unusually productive. Not only has the decomposing seaweed poured into coastal waters, but we've also seen the creation of the Great Atlantic Sargassum Belt, a massive trail of floating mats of sargassum stretching all the way from the Gulf of Mexico and Caribbean straight across the Atlantic to West Africa. Sargassum isn't so bad if it stays in the Sargasso Sea, but way out in the Atlantic and along coasts, it can cause a problem because when it dies, it stinks and it smells and it's horrible, like a big doo-doo farty McFarter pants rolled into town and you were like, oh hey, I never ordered smelly seaweed on the menu. Can you get out of here? Blankets of smelly sargassum can choke out delicate ecosystems and coral reefs. Could this be a result of chemicals we've dumped into the ocean acting as fertilizer for the seaweed? Presently, we can't be sure. I'm pretty sure it's that. I'm pretty sure it's that. Right now, it's just another mystery of the ocean we get to solve. And it also sources a lot of conspiracy theories. Like, there's a lot of conspiracy theories about it.
Boom! There you go! 14 mermaid pieces topped with a bunch of cool weirdos telling you why the ocean is cool. Basically exactly what I said you'd get. So we're all now gonna learn how to scuba dive and meet up under the sea, right? Cool. I'll see you there. In the meantime, why don't we end off with some cool extra oceanic art? Cause like, that's the theme I used to pick the fan art today. I'm predictable that way. We'll start things off appropriately with Ponder Beach by IrishNekoArts. Not just the finished version, but the flats and the sketch too, because I liked them. Where big, strong Octomama gets to relax with big, strong boy fiend. There's so much to love here, from the Ponder Sprocket fan plane to the Patrick Starfish, to the adorable Krabu, and that heckin' gorgeous high heel and bikini combo. Like damn, as if Ponder Sprocket isn't already tall enough. This is a piece I think we all needed. As we dip below the waves, we have Ponder in the Sea by the where Ponder Sprocket as the beautiful sultry siren lures in weebians to their watery demise. I love the almost ethereal glistening shine on everybody, really makes everything pop underwater and gives her a sort of heavenly appearance. With her precious good boy sidekick at the ready, and then I'm there. Hey. And because I guess even the gods need to be reminded to not believe people at their word, here's Lesson for the Sea Goddess by Rita Shipu. And so, we always check the evidence before prosecuting. Meanwhile, the goddess is like, this tiny creature wants me to play by the judicial system. I don't know, man. I've read a lot of mythology. I don't know if gods care too much about facts and evidence. Oh, maybe that's why they need Ponder Sprocket. It all makes sense now. Bouncing back for some Octomade fun, here's Welcome by Palentiny, going for a lovely lighter pink tone for Ponder's tentacles, maybe so she doesn't get them tangled up with fiends. He seems to be pretty content with this outcome. This is her welcoming us to the beauty of the ocean. Plus, let's be real, her hair is kind of perfect for that. Every time she moves to swim, it just goes swish, swish. For some more lovely beach time fun, we have Fanart by the art chick Rosie. They've provided us with a lovely oceanic piece with Ponder Sprocket and Fiend at the forefront, and with a nice blocky silhouette to act as a beach so that we can perfectly see the water behind it. This is a good use of solid black. Filling in a piece with detail can be important, like Ponder Sprocket's hair, but a lack of detail and negative space can be equally as important, and Rosie portrays a good balance here. Very nice. Swimming out of your third eye, here's The Fish Took My Eye by X-MichiMochi-x, where Ponder Sprocket has cute little fishies on the mind. Or maybe they're taking over her brain, I don't know. Not only did Mochi create an underwater glistening for the fishies to swim in, they also turned Ponder Sprocket's hair danglies into Fiend's tentacles. It's just like, dang guys, that's an artist being a smarty pants right there. That's a smartist. If you need visual fodder for your romantic fantasies, here's The Ocean Sounds Like a Dream by RachelsRandomArtwork. Posing Ponder Sprocket under the ruby sky, seated next to a sapphire sea, glammed up like she's going to be featured on a magazine cover, even with a shooting star right behind her head. Hot damn, you guys want to fall in love with Ponder Sprocket? Well, Rachel has set the whole scene for you. Gorgeous. For some challenge fun, we have Ponder Sprocket the OctoQueen, Inktober Day 5 by Pranksty, turning Ponder Sprocket into a proper queen of the depths. The last time I saw an Octomade with a trident, things didn't exactly pan out well for everyone, but she definitely rocks the look. The gold done for the background really helps to draw your attention and bring out the details, and knowing this was all done for an Inktober day just makes me appreciate it more. Conceptualizing some mystery fare, here's Underwater Sun by Illuminoir, where it seems as though Ponder Sprocket and Fiend have set their sights on investigating some mystical force. I mean, if you're gonna be swimming down in the dark depths, why not dive headfirst into some paranormal chicanery? Maybe they're turning human. Noir's even made Fiend look like, a Are we sure we know what we're doing? Love. Because there's no way you can escape the mermaid-esque fantasy, here's Heowit Ponder by Tori PNG, picturing Ponder Sprocket as one of the fictional Heowit species from Tori's own story. Of course I know who you are. She looks insulted, like, excuse you, I actually do my research. Look at that hip sway hand pose action. She'll help you, assumed protagonist. But she has no time for these scrubs. To quench your tactile art thirst, here's a Ponder Over a Brook by Gilmore Purple. Because, you know, ponder, brook, ha, ha 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 ha. Sorry, I thought that was funny. Couldn't not point that out. Really accenting the nice orange and blue contrast. Something about stretching as far as you can over some water paired with the color combo here is very nostalgic for me. Reminds me of jumping over ravines as a kid. And finally, I know it doesn't fit with the oceanic theme of the rest of them, but I couldn't not include it when I saw it because boy! Here's Ponder Night by Hannah Flaum, and I hope you'll excuse me as I just boy! Ponder Sprocket the Knight coming in to rescue your damsels and make wickedness quiver, and with Big Boy Fiend just spreading out like her heckin' hype octopus man. I am at the point in my life where people make all this beautiful content in response to my characters. How have I been so lucky? If you happen to like any of these pieces, please don't hesitate to send some love to the artists through their social links down in the description. If you have your own artwork of any of my characters that you'd like to see appear in the fan art feature, you can send them to emptycomicsfanart@outlook.com. You can also check out my own links while you're down there if you're so inclined. And with that, return to fish!